What's up, YouTube? This is Big Mike. I didn't forget the video request from about maybe going on 2 weeks ago now to talk about the Malice at the Palace, November 19th, 2004, between the Detroit Pistons and the Indiana Pacers. I feel like talking about it right now, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. I remember that date because it was a Friday. It was a Friday evening. And I remember I was at TGI Fridays with my sister-in-law at the time and her brother. And we were eating there. And I remember catching the earlier part of the game, like the first quarter. Now, we had already been there for a little while when the game came on, and we watched like most of the first quarter, I think. And I remember we left, and I hung out with them for a little while, but then I went home. And when I went home, it was late in the fourth quarter, so I caught all of it. I didn't catch much of the game, but I caught all of the incident. And I remember watching it, and I remember being shocked at how easily the Pacers were beating the Detroit Pistons in that game. They were essentially blowing them out. Flirted with a 20-point lead a lot of the game, and you could tell that the Pistons were frustrated. They couldn't figure out the Pacers offensively. The Pistons were known for their defense, but it was the Pacers who were stifling the Pistons in this game. And not only were they stifling the Pistons, the Pacers looked really good offensively by the standards of the day. When I say the standards of the day, this was still when the NBA was more defensive-minded. But that would change soon. I'm going to make a reference to that shortly. But I remember late in the game, and everybody remembers the score. The score was 97-82, which there was still some time left on the clock. Not much. I think it was like 40 or 50 seconds left on the clock. It was like 97-82. And Ron Artest fouls Ben Wallace. All right. I think it was like a scuffle for the big. I'm trying to remember. Did Big Ben go up to try to score? I think he tried to go up and score, and Ron Artest fouled him hard, smacked him in the back of the head, fouled him. And the Pistons were really frustrated. Okay, they were the defending champions. They had upset the Los Angeles Lakers several months earlier in the NBA Finals, beat them 4-1, much to my glee, being a Kobe and, well, at the time, a Kobe hater. And I'm just honest, I was. I like him now because he's no longer playing. Now he's history, and that's what I love, is history. So I like him now. But tempers were flaring, and Big Ben, I remember he pushed Ron Artest all the way to goddamn Kalamazoo. I mean, he just pushed him, and I remember Ron Artest flailing. But I remember he sort of went to Ben Wallace for a little bit, but then he stopped. And then I remember him, strangely at the time, sitting on the scorer's table, in a relaxed pose. And I've learned since then that this was suggested to him by, who was it? Was it one of the training staff or one of the coach's assistants? Or was it, I'm trying to remember who it was who suggested to Ron Artest to do that whenever he got upset about something. Because I remember Ron Artest when he was with the Chicago Bulls, man, and he used to get really pissed off sometimes. The guy is an okay guy, but Artest is a bit of a head case at times. Excuse me. I can't remember who it was who suggested it to him, but he, was sitting back on the scores table and collecting his thoughts and calming himself down. And I remember this went on for a couple of minutes. Well, a minute or so. But then, inexplicably, I remember seeing an object thrown at him. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. I couldn't really pinpoint it with my eye what it was. I remember somebody threw something at him. Now I know it was a cup of beer, I think. But they threw it at him. And I also think that Ron Artest stated, now I'm going off memory here, but I think Artest said that when the cup was thrown at him, a racial epithet was also uttered his way. And then I remember Artest leaping up, and I saw something that I had never seen before in the history of sports, not in basketball at least. Fans are always, to me, seen as props. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like they're props. The basketball court is a stage, and the fans are live-action props. But the two shall never meet. You know what I mean? The basketball players are actors and performers, if you want to use a better term. And the basketball court's the stage, and the fans are just props in the background. But never before had I seen the performers actually seriously acknowledging the existence of the props, but then proceeding to destroy the props. Artest went after the fan. Now, if I remember correctly, he actually went after the wrong guy. But then I remember him going after the guy and was trying to fight him. And I remember like, what in the hell is going on? I was like shocked. Like, what the hell? Like everybody that was watching it probably for a split second were like, what the fuck? We never seen anything like that before. I mean, I remember a couple of, what was it, like 9 years earlier, I remember Vernon Maxwell punched a fan, which was shocking. But this was different because it wasn't just a one-on-one thing. This was the whole team getting involved. Okay, when Ron Artest went to the stands, that was one thing. Then I remember Steven Jackson. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, Steven Jackson had actually made a decision to help out his brother in arms, the Indiana Pacers, Ron Artest, and he was talking shit to the bench, the Detroit Pistons bench. I've read that he got into an altercation with Derek Coleman, who was winding down his NBA career. And I think it was his last season, if I'm not mistaken. And Derek Coleman actually told Steven Jackson, and Derek Coleman was no joke, you know what I mean? Derek Coleman was from the rough and tumble, like Charles Barkley mentality, okay? Derek Coleman told Steven Jackson straight up, I will kill you. If you come at me, if you put your hands on me, I'm going to fucking kill you. And maybe that motivated Steven Jackson to leave that bench, but he went into the stands, and then he started going after fans. And I was just like, what the fuck is going on? And then it just was like security was like just a false thing. Like, it was like a false sense of security. I mean, literally, because they couldn't control what happened. The players just went berserk. Players were coming off the bench. Players were observers. Players were like interacting with fans. When I say interacting, I mean like fighting, fisticuffs. You had fans coming out of the crowds and going on the court and confronting players and players punching fans. I remember one incident, I think Jermaine O'Neal was punched by a fan. I think this fan was actually wanted to get punched because he wanted to sue somebody, But But I remember seeing that. I just remember like just being, you know, I knew what I was looking at was bad, and I knew that it would be the I put it like this. I can only imagine if this had happened 10 years later when social media was existed, what the outcome would have been. I think as bad as the situation was for everybody that was involved, I think it would have been even worse if social media was there. I do. But I remember thinking in my head, these guys might go to jail because technically we don't like to think about it because we think of sports, think of boxing and people punching each other. But look, this is assault. And I'm like, Ron Artest and Steven Jackson are going to fucking jail. I was thinking that. And I've read that when these two guys, especially Artest, were ushered, into their locker rooms, that police officers were actually looking to arrest these guys, especially Ron Artest. But I just remember like just everything just going nuts, man. Fans were just starting to turn on everybody, turn on the Pacers. They were throwing things at Pacers players. But I have to bring this up too, okay? At the time, I didn't notice it because I was 24 years old. I wasn't as conscious of race as I am now. But I do notice that the fans' animus was aimed at the black players. Okay. Now I know you're gonna be like, okay, Mike, there you go with the race again. Everything's about race. Everything's not about race with me, but I do notice that the fans were throwing food and beer and cups and whatever. They were throwing everything at black players on the Pacers squad. Even players who weren't even involved, they were throwing black things at them. They were throwing objects at the black players. Even people in the coaching staff that were black, they were throwing things at them. So you have to wonder just a little bit, was there some racial undertones as far as the fans' reaction to the Pacers players individually? Because I don't remember seeing them throw anything at the white players or the white coaching assistants or the white coach, for example, who at the time was Rick Carlisle, if I remember correctly. But I just remember that it was to move on from that subject. I knew it was bad. I knew it was just bad, man. That's all I know. I knew it was bad. It was a horrible situation. And I knew that the suspensions would be unprecedented. Okay? And when it came out, as far as suspension is concerned, they were very hefty. I can't remember exactly what each suspension was. Okay, I don't remember everything. I should have looked up some stuff, but I think Artest was suspended something like 70. Was it 72 or 73 games? I think he lost like $5 million in salary. I think Steven Jackson was suspended for like 40 games or so or something like that. Then you had Jermaine O'Neal, who missed a considerable amount of games. And then you had a lot of players who were missing like, a small handful of games, but it was like a lot of players on that team just for leaving the bench. I think even Reggie Miller was suspended a game for leaving the bench. But you have to think that at that time, Reggie was thinking, because it ended up being his last year, he had to be thinking like, man, I got to get out of this league. because there was a perception of the NBA at that time too. And that's why I try to keep things into perspective, because sometimes I can be critical of the league today and say it's soft and, and it's too friendly and buddy. And I just feel that way, man, because I grew up in a different basketball era than a lot of younger guys, okay? That's just my personal opinion. There's no knock on the great players of today. I just prefer the style of basketball that I grew up with. Just like when you guys get older and the NBA might make another change or evolution, you're going to like the style you're accustomed to watching right now. That's your comfort zone. Then if they change the way that they play, let's say it goes back to how I like to watch it, you're not going to like it because that's not what you're accustomed to and what you like. But they're going to call you guys haters. So it's cyclical. That's just how these things are. But I remember, just going back to my point, man. I remember thinking that fucked that team up, right? Because that game showed that the Pistons had a serious rivalry that was going to start with that team, the Pacers, because they looked like they had finally arrived. Ron Artest looked like he was positioned to reach the next level as a basketball player. That team had a lot of guys on that squad that I think were playing at high levels in their primes at that time. But those suspensions, the cloud over that team, everything just changed that Pacers team, and their fortunes slowly drifted down. And of course, the Pistons were going to reach the finals for the second year in a row, and they'll play, in my opinion, a classic finals, which was between the Spurs that went 7 games, with the Spurs winning in 7. But it was a great finals. But the NBA had incurred a black eye, okay? There was like so many fines levied, so much salary loss as far as Pacers is concerned, but the prevailing image hit that the NBA took was just horrible. Now, after Jordan retired in 1998 and you had these new stars come in, led by Allen Iverson, I remember, and I'm just being honest, man. Let's just keep it real, okay? I remember there were a lot of fans, and there was a lot of stories and articles that were saying how NBA ratings had dropped a lot after Michael Jordan retired in 1998. After Jordan retired and then Karl Malone had just retired. But, all of those guys from the 80s, Jordan, Drexler, Barkley, all those guys had left, okay? Stockton was winding down his career. All of the older established stars, Elijah Wan had wound down his career and retired a couple years early. You get what I'm saying? Now it was these young guys, okay? I remember that all these commercials, it's our turn now, and all that type of stuff. But I don't think these commercials and these stars rubbed well with, and I got to use a code word here, mainstream basketball fans. And that was talked about a lot in articles, and how a lot of ratings had dropped because a particular group of fans, white fans, were hemorrhaging. And I remember every team, I remember back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, everybody had cornrows. Everybody, were influenced by Allen Iverson, who was probably one of the most influential basketball players of all time. Him, Jordan. I'm not saying they're the same level skill-wise or status wise, but when it comes to influencing basketball, wow, those two guys are up right. Man, should I say 1 and 2? I mean, I know Stephen Curry is influential as far as the 3-point shot, but it wasn't just the shooting aspect of it. Iverson was so influential with his style. Iverson kind of even reinforced more of the ISO individual basketball mindset and game. The cornrows, the tattoos, the swag he had. You know what I'm saying? But this kind of rubbed white America a little bit the wrong way. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there was this perception that the NBA was too black now, it's like too black cultured. It's there were fewer and fewer white stars or superstars, or the league had become too urbanized, so to speak, which I think is bullshit. But they were trying to find some excuse as to why all of these franchises all of a sudden were just losing so much money. I think the NBA in 2004 lost like $400 million in revenue. Okay? So the league took an image hit from the most infamous incident in NBA history. The only thing that comes close to it, in my opinion, will probably be when Kermit Washington punched Rudy Tomjanovich in the late 70s, okay? And in more ways than one, that night, November 19, 2004, was the end of the era of basketball that I like to watch. The defensive-minded, rugged, work for every point, half-court set basketball that I enjoyed watching was over. The next year, the league changed everything. They wanted to win back fans. They tried to open up the game. They tried to take away the physicality of it. Okay, they wanted to emphasize perimeter shooters and perimeter scorers, and take the focal point offensively away from 4s and 5s and 3s, where it's more physical and rugged. And they wanted to have it. They wanted to pretty up the game. They wanted to, make it less physical. So that's why, if you look at the 2005-2006 season, when all of these rule changes really went into effect, hand checking, all of that totally went away. I mean, it had been going away since the mid-'90s, but now perimeter offensive player could do anything. All of a sudden, if you look at 2004-05 and then 2005-06, you see all of these scoring records all of a sudden happen. You had guys like Gilbert Arenas come out from nowhere. Steve Nash all of a sudden became an all-star. Okay, you had all these guys who were putting up before 18, 19 points a game. Now all of a sudden, they're putting up 22, 23 points a game. Guys who were putting up 22, 23 points a game, now all of a sudden they're scoring 26, 27 points a game. You get what I'm saying? Kobe, a guy who was averaging 25, 26 points a game, now all of a sudden that year he's putting up 35 points a game. AI, who had been showing signs of falling off, all of a sudden, he's averaging 33 points a game. He's shooting a career high 45% from the floor. The league had changed. And not only that, the league was trying to cater to mainstream America. All of a sudden, they started drafting more and more European players. And this was the beginning of the league that you see now. Well, you have centers shooting threes, guys making 400 three-pointers in a season, teams shooting 60 three-pointers in a game by themselves, not including the other team. I remember back when the Houston Rockets were playing in the 90s, and 39 three-pointers by a team was considered like huge. Like shooting 39 threes in a game was enormous. Now you have teams that shoot 50 easy, 60 easy. So that, in a nutshell, to me is the lasting effects of the brawl, man. It ruined the Pacers team that could have been a championship caliber team for a couple of years, and it changed the league, in my opinion, for the worse. I just don't like the way a lot of the ways basketball is played now. It's kind of soft, but the Malice at the Palace, if you think about it, had a lot of effect on that, man. And a lot of players' careers were sort of ruined. Case in point, Ron Artest. I think his career was ruined a bit by what happened, man. And for a long time, man, he was public enemy number one. He was kind of looked at as the Mike Tyson of the NBA, like he was a crazy dude and shit. And I remember Steven Jackson was saying that he was hurt from Ron Artest because when he came back from suspension the next year, he requested to be traded. And he was like, damn, dude, like, I basically, not just me, but we, collectively as a team, we, instead of watching you go out in the stands and act like a fool by yourself, well, I can't say act like a fool because, he was standing up for himself. Instead of just watching you fight, we joined the fight, man. We sacrificed our careers for you, and then you bail on the team by wanting to be traded. So, that was it for that team, man. I think Artest was traded to the Kings. And that's about it, man. Other changes to the game also would be that the NBA limited the sale of alcohol. Before the Malice in the Palace, man, you could get pissy drunk. They don't allow that now because of that. And security is now off the chain because of that incident. All right, shit like that now will be shut down quick, okay? But that's a night that basketball will never forget, man. When Fright Night hit the Palace, man, it was an event that will live in infamy. And tell me what you guys think.